One element of Jeffrey's research has remained unresolved in his mind: the organized programs that allow school children to spend months raising farm animals, naming them like a companion animal, caring for them every day, exhibiting them with all due pride, then, just like that, giving them up for slaughter. He asked Jim Mason, a farm boy turned lawyer and animal activist, and co-author of the groundbreaking book Animal Factories, published back in 1990. Jim's history with this goes back to his early teens.
I was deemed to be big enough then to help with the what we called working the calves, which means castrating them, dehorning them, and clipping their ears and doing all these painful things. And as a young child, they'd let me watch all this, so I knew it was terrible. I saw the terror in the animals. I saw the violence of them, struggling with them and everything. And yet, it was that day, it was my time to go out and help with all this. And I remember we were going over the fence. I started crying because I knew what I was going to have to do. And my uncle said, in his exact words, they ring in my ears, he said, "If you don't straighten up and act like a man, we'll send you back to the house with the girls."
Wow, there it is.
You're a sissy if you don't go with us.
Right.
When I was on the farm, at that age, I actually didn't belong to farm kid groups, but my brother did. And there were a lot of other kinds of groups like that that prepared you to be a farmer. One of the most common projects is raising like a heifer or a pig or a steer or something for a show. And then they go to the state fair and they show these animals and they win ribbons. You see these kids spend so much time with these animals and really get attached to them, almost like pets. And then comes the time when they have to part ways with that animal. They have to go to slaughter, they have to go to auction. And often it's very traumatic for these kids. Even though you've been close to this animal and you've groomed it and maybe slept with it for weeks, it has to go to market.
This is how they say it. When you get your first animal, they tell you, you always cry on your first animal, but you get used to it. You get used to it. I'm like, what do you mean by that? I mean, yeah, you get used to it, okay. You get used to the fact that something that you get attached to for months is taken from you and killed. I mean, how are you supposed to get used to that? And I couldn't get used to it.
Misty Vigna is a high school student from San Jose, California, who went through this program only once, with a steer she named Ferdinand.
Steer, I had him for 10 months, and it was every day I was out there. It would have been easier if we'd had a plan for him to be slaughtered from the start, but he wasn't supposed to be, so it came like out of nowhere on me. I was out there, I'd get up at 5 o'clock or 5:30 every morning, be out at school 2 hours before it started, and I'd go out there, I'd stay out there for a while in the morning, feed him and everything, and then I would be out there at lunch most of the time, and then I had 2 periods of agriculture where I was usually out there before then anyways, and I'd stay after school until 4:30 every day after school with him. At first I thought, oh, what am I doing with a cow? This is so stupid, right? It was a steer, and it's like, I thought, it was going to be easy, and he turned into, he seriously, I always told everybody, he's like a big puppy. I would call him, and he would come over to me, and he'd put his nose in his halter for me, and it's like when I went to visit him while they had him at the fair, and I went over there, and I called his name, and his little ear turned up, and he turned around, and he started mooing, and I started crying, and everyone was like, oh, there she goes again, and I'm like, for people to say that they don't have emotion, they don't know that you're there, it's not true.
The idea of discovery and proof of an internal emotional event is harder to prove, harder to control, and harder to justify in what sense that should be taken on board by anybody and for what reason.
Gisela Kaplan is a professor